You ever cram for a big test? You feel like you've got it all down, and then poof, the next day it's just gone? Yeah, it's a super frustrating feeling, we all know. But what if I told you there's a way to actually lock that information in, inspired by students who are absolute masters of memory? Today, we're going to dive into their systems for making things stick. Let's get right into it. I mean, that's the big question, right? We spend all these hours learning, reading, studying, and for what? Just for our brains to feel like a leaky bucket? The information goes in and it feels like it just pours right back out. But you know what? It really doesn't have to be that way. Now, check this out. While a lot of us might struggle for days to memorize just one complicated formula, students in Japan can get over 100 complex kanji characters memorized in a single day. So how do they do it? Well, they don't have super brains, they have super systems. And today we're going to unpack that exact playbook. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the visual magic they call kanji coding. Then we'll look at how you can use emotion as a kind of memory superglue. After that, we're going to totally challenge the way you study by mixing things up. We'll also cover why teaching something is the best way to learn it. And we'll wrap up with a really surprising secret about the empty space on your page. Okay, let's kick things off with the absolute foundation of how Japanese kids learn thousands of these characters. They don't just drill them over and over. Nope. Instead, they learn to actually see the story inside of the symbol. So here's the core idea. Every single kanji is basically treated like a little picture. Take the character for tree, for example. It's not just a bunch of random lines. It's actually designed to look like a tree, with a trunk, branches spreading out, and roots digging down. It connects this abstract symbol to a real-world image you already know. And this, right here, is why it works so incredibly well. Get this. Our brains process visuals 60,000 times faster than they process plain old text. So by turning words into images, you're basically shifting your learning into your brain's high-speed lane. It's a total game changer. So how can you actually use this? It's really simple. The next time you're taking notes, don't just write out a word like photosynthesis. Add a quick, tiny doodle of a sun shining on a plant next to it. You're not trying to be Picasso here. You're just giving your brain a little visual hook to hang that memory on. All right, let's move on to our second secret, and this one builds right on top of that visualization idea. This is all about using your feelings as a kind of memory adhesive. Because think about it. If a memory has an emotional charge to it, it just sticks. Memory coaches over in Japan are all over this. The systems they create are almost never boring. They make them deliberately dramatic or silly or even a little shocking. Why? Well, emotions actually leave a chemical trace in the brain, and that trace hardens into a really strong memory. We've all heard this 1,000 times, right? It's a classic, standard, kind of boring fact. Yeah, it's important, but it's not exactly memorable, is it? It's just flat. Okay, now let's inject some feeling into that. Instead of a boring powerhouse, just imagine an angry, overworked energy factory. Maybe it's got a little foreman's hat on, and it's screaming at the other lazy parts of the cell to get back to work. I know, it's ridiculous, but I bet you won't forget it now. That's the power of adding a little drama. All right, on to our third technique. And this one might challenge a study habit that is super common. Focusing on just one subject for hours and hours. It turns out, that might be one of the least effective ways you can learn. So, Japanese students often use a method called interleaved practice. Instead of studying in these big, long blocks, they weave different topics together into a single session. Think of it less like a long, boring jog and more like circuit training for your brain. It's much more effective. So here's what that actually looks like in practice. The old way is just grinding through math for 2 straight hours. But the Japanese way, that's doing maybe 30 minutes of math, then switching to history, and then jumping over to physics. Every single time your brain has to switch gears, it's forced to actively recall the info from the last topic, and that process is what makes the memory so much deeper and stronger. So this next secret, it was actually discovered by watching a Japanese exchange student who, if you just glanced at him, it looked like he was talking to a wall. But he wasn't going crazy. He was using one of the most powerful memory techniques that exist. It's known as the Feynman technique, and it's incredibly popular in Japanese schools. The whole idea is simple. If you can't explain something in simple terms, you don't really understand it yet. The act of teaching it forces you to find the holes in your own knowledge. And here's a super practical way you can try this right now.
After you learn something new, just open the voice recorder app on your phone and try to explain the concept out loud, from scratch, as if you're talking to a friend. When you listen back, you will immediately hear where you hesitate or get confused. And boom, those are the exact spots you need to review.
And now for our final secret. And honestly, this one might be the most surprising of them all. It has nothing to do with what you write down and everything to do with what you don't write down. You know, we've all heard of spaced repetition, reviewing stuff over longer and longer intervals. But Japanese students have also mastered the art of visual space. If you ever look at their notebooks, you'll often find these huge amounts of white space, and it's used as a deliberate memory tool. So on the left, you see what most of our notes look like, right? A dense wall of text. But on the right, that's the Japanese style. Every key idea gets its own space, its own breathing room. These visual gaps, they act like punctuation for your brain, helping it automatically sort the information into these neat little chunks that are way easier to remember later. So let's do a real quick recap. The 5 secrets are: 1. Kanji coding, turn your words into pictures. 2. Emotional mnemonics, add some drama to your facts. 3. Interleaved practice, mix up your subjects to force your brain to work a little harder. 4. Teaching as recall, explain it out loud to find your weak spots. And finally, 5. Visual gaps. Use that white space in your notes to help your brain organize. When you really boil it down, what all these techniques teach us is a huge shift in how we think about memory. It isn't about brute force or just repeating something a million times. It's about finding a rhythm that actually works with your brain's natural wiring. It's not so much a science, it's more like an art. And now, you have the paintbrush.